Hello, everyone. Welcome to Drumfills Kafé. My name is Denis, and welcome to yet another episode of this 8th season. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Very cool. Before we start, I invite you, as usual, to go check out the Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok pages of Drumfills Kafé, to do a like, and of course, to subscribe to those pages. Of course, I'll invite you to also check out the website, drumfillscafe.com, to check out all the past other seasons and what's coming up for this 8th season. So tonight, my guest has performed with so many artists, it would take me the whole episode to name them all, basically. But some of them he's performed with include Alana Davis, Chuck Loeb, Average White Band, Todd Rundgren, Sammy Hagar, and Kenny Loggins, and so many more. Some of his TV credits include the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on NBC at TV broadcasts and the NBC 4th of July performance. He's also known for being the drummer for the best-selling duo of all time called Hall & Oates, which is one of my favorite groups ever. And he's also the drummer of Live from Daryl's House with Daryl Hall. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Brian Dunne.
How you doing, man?
How you doing, Brian?
I'm good.
Thanks so much
for having me.
Well, welcome. And thanks so much for saying yes to our invitation. So where you are you at home right now? Are you relaxing today? Is this sort of a relaxing day?
A little bit. I'm doing some recording later, but I am home. Yeah.
Cool. Is recording something that you've been doing a lot lately?
Yeah. I started doing remote drum sessions probably close to 19 years now. I jumped in really early doing it.
Really?
But I didn't have a whole lot of traffic coming in and out for many years. I mean, a session here and there, but over the last, I'd say 2.5 years, I've gotten pretty busy. It's been pretty amazing.
Would COVID be one of the factors of that people basically have gotten used to that?
I think so. I think it's a huge factor. I assumed, the funny thing is, it seems like when COVID happened, I started to see a lot more drummers getting studio setups in their house to do just that, which would then kind of tell me, well, I'm probably going to get less work. But and not only that, but of all the people that were not making money, musicians were at the top of that heap.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know where people are getting money from. But ironically, it was just the opposite. I've been really busy. So I've been super lucky.
That's cool. So, well, let's get into it right away. So the remote drumming session stuff, you say you started 19 years ago. How was that 19 years ago? Like some 20 years ago? Was it like a huge sort of input board? How did you do it?
Yeah, no, I used to play with this guitar player named Chuck Loeb, and he was the guy that told me a long time ago. He was a Pro Tools user, and he would do the lion's share of his records would be done at the studio in his house. And he just told me, he said, hey, man, a lot of people don't want to program drums. I mean, certain music just sounds better that way. It's just made for it. But the thing that a lot of producers hate doing, keyboard players, is actually sitting through the process of finding sounds and creating drum tracks. So he's like, if you can play, he's like, I would suggest you spend a little bit of money and you'll always be needed. So I just took him up on it. I mean, I started super modest. I started with just like a little M box that only had 2 inputs,
right.
And then I graduated to a 002 that had 8 inputs.
Right.
So yeah, and then I just learned as I go. I still the whole engineering thing and the miking of drums and all that. It's outboard gear. It's the more I do it, the better I get at it, and the more I realize I know very little.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. I went through that process as well. I've been sort of doing it for, well, not as many years as you, but a couple of years now. And when you take a mic and you realize, oh, it sounds better if I actually move it here in my room compared to like this spot, and you just do testing, you're like, really? Like, because the rooms are, anyways, back in the day, I mean, I'm sure you had your fair share of studios, but a studio sounded, had an acoustic to it. And I don't know if you have to deal with that, like in a basement situation. Is that your situation?
Yeah, I'm in a basement, a sheetrock room, but I did some work on the acoustics. I should do a little more actually, but so far no complaints. So yeah.
And do clients want just like a full drum set, or they're asking for some percussion stuff, or sometimes they want full drum set and mixed? How do you? What is
For
the client's demands?
for me, 99% of the time, it's drum set. It's very rarely percussion, and if they even if they ask for anything other than a shaker or a tambourine, even those two things, I don't do that very well.
Okay.
But hand drumming, forget about it.
Okay.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, but most of my stuff is drum set, and usually what they want is to be given back a multi-track session or just multi-tracks of drums,
Right.
so that they have as much control over me after the fact as they can.
So they can.
And
they can.
yeah, so they mix it themselves. That's
Right,
something that I don't do. And the other thing is, they don't, and whoever the engineer that they happen to be working with, if they have an engineer, they hate if you treat the tracks with
Okay.
outboard gear or with plugins. They want raw. To them, it's like, don't ruin it before I get a chance to ruin it. So, no, I mean, they usually do the right thing, and they don't need me to muck it up on them beforehand. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So your kit is as dry as possible, as if you had less reverb and less effect as possible, basically.
Right. Just basically zero reverb, zero gating, zero EQ. Occasionally, what happens is I'll do a track and I have to send them some. There's a little bit of that bit back and forth. Like, I'm never going to just talk about a track, do it once and say, there you go, you got your track. There's back and forth involved,
right?
Which is one of the challenges of this whole thing. But in the back and forth, I have no choice but to make a mix so they can hear my drums in context with the song. And sometimes, it's rare, but sometimes it will be like, whatever you're doing to those drums, I want them to sound like that.
Okay.
And then I have to tell them, well, I'm EQing the kick and I'm EQing the snare drum, and they'll say, okay, well, do that. It's like, okay.
Okay.
So,
cool,
yeah.
cool. And I mean, how do you start, I'm gonna say, like, promoting yourself, that's what you do? Is it basically from word of mouth? Is it because certain producers? How does that happen for you?
It started off with word of mouth. It started off basically when you do it, you wind up doing recordings for your friends.
Right.
So at the time, the guy who got me into it was Chuck Loeb. So right from the get-go, he was using me to play on some of his records, and I didn't have to leave my house. And then anybody else I knew that I was playing with at the time, I was living in Brooklyn. So there were so many musicians around. And at that point, I wasn't looking at it as I need to make money now. To me, it was a learning process. So I had all these great musicians, and I was a guinea pig. Like, send me a track. I don't need any money, that kind of thing. I'm learning, and then before you know it, then the word starts to spread. You hope, and that's it.
So the work basically talks for itself, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Pretty much. Well, that's what I hope. But the more people and then if you start doing gigs when you start to be seen more, like anything else, if you're doing I guess whatever you want to consider a big gig or some TV work, whatever it is, your stock rises, and then the whole process of what do you ask for becomes easy because people kind of come to you with a more respectable offers to begin with. So
right.
It's a vicious cycle in a positive way. So
well, that's interesting, because that's one of the last questions I want to ask about that is, how do you deal with the business part of
Poorly. I'm terrible.
No, but I mean, for remote drumming, because the question I think most people ask themselves is, how much do I charge, right? Like I want three songs, I want one song, how much do I charge? Is it $100? Is it 150? Is it 500? Like how much do you charge, and how much do you deal with the business, the payment, that sort of thing?
Basically, I make sure that they're satisfied with the track and they have the files. I've never been burned. I should knock on wood. It's like saying my computer runs smoothly, which it does, but I shouldn't have said that. So yeah, I mean, I make sure every client they're satisfied. They have their tracks before I'm paid. I don't get paid up front, nothing. And I also don't have a set price. I don't. I look at it like, if you're only going to do one tune, it's going to be in one ballpark. If you're going to do 4 tunes, and then I'm going to cut you a break. If you're someone that Yeah, because it's just then it's a volume thing.
Mm.
If you have some sort of financial backing, or you have a record label behind you, then I'm gonna try to get more money. I'm gonna, basically, you don't get what we none of us get what we deserve. And then when you get to situations where there is a little bit of a budget, then you get close to what you think you deserve.
Okay.
And lastly, I'll just say, so many people do this now, that it's like you have to respect yourself, right? But at the same time, it's like there are other people that are really great that are doing this, and you have to, I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. I've always just been. I'm a poor businessman. Let's put it that way.
You love the music. You love the music so much. That's the thing.
I really do, and I would rather be. I'm better at it than I used to be. I'll put it that way. It's good. It's become an excellent second income for me. I cannot live off of it. Definitely not.
Okay.
But between that and touring, it's been great for me lately. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So basically you're adjusting yourself to whatever the artist situation is, basically. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for talking about that, and let's move on. I'm always curious to know what was the moment for you that music just grabbed you and said, "This is what I want to do"? Was it when you were a teenager? Was it some concert? Was it something in particular?
I didn't have one of those moments, but I
No?
grew up in a house with two brothers that were musicians. So there was always a drum set in my house. And yeah, so like from when I was, oh my God, I mean, I must have been in third grade, and my brothers would be downstairs playing Bad Company. You know what I mean? Or Rock Candy. When I played with Sammy Hagar on Daryl's show, I actually had to take the time to go to him and tell him, like, the first song I ever learned, like sitting behind a drum set and giving it a go, was Rock Candy on the Ronnie Montrose record that Sammy's the singer on. And like, so yeah, it's like amazing that to be able to get to play with the guy after all those years, So yeah, for me, there wasn't a definitive moment. Like it wasn't like I saw the Beatles on TV or like a lot of people's story. For me, I was just always around it, always around music, in the house.
So it's a family situation that made you sort of just be part of it. Cool. Yeah, because you're the younger brother. You want to be part of the family. You want to sort of interact with your brothers.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, here in Canada, it's hockey. Everybody plays hockey. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. Like, I had to choose between hockey and a drum set at one year because I had to renew all my equipment or get a drum set, and the drum set won that year. So
nice.
To my parents, a little dismayed, like, really, a drum set in the house? Okay, but that's another story. Okay, so very cool. So you playing? Did you take any lessons? Did you had a teacher? Did something motivate you or taught you?
I studied. I mean, I studied. I had my brother who was a great musician. Okay. My brother Kevin, who played great, and my brother John was a guitar player who actually became a drummer. Both just naturally great players, and both always bringing the right stuff home. Well, I shouldn't call it the right stuff. To me, it was the right stuff.
In terms of music?
In terms of music, yeah. So I had all these records coming in the house, and they would get into certain things, and they'd dive deep into whoever the guy of the day was that they were checking out. So I was the recipient of that. And I studied with a guy named Al Miller in Long Island.
Okay.
And his son, Matt Miller, is also a great drummer. And with Al, he really got my reading together. My brother did prior to even going to him, but he took it, he kept it moving up.
What kind of reading would you be doing? What is it? Ted Reed? Is it that sort of thing?
It was snare drum repertoire, but like the Podemsky book, the Cerrone book, the Albright book, those books, right? And also my brother was taking lessons with a guy at the community college near where we grew up, from a guy named Ronald Gould, who was the principal percussionist for the New York City Ballet.
Oh,
killer, amazing musician. And I knew I was going to go there after my brother.
Okay.
And so my brother was giving me all the stuff he was doing with Gould before I got there.
Nice.
But that was straight up classical snare drum repertoire.
Okay.
And I did. I ultimately wound up going there and playing. And man, first lesson I ever took with him, I've told the story a zillion times, but it's worth it.
Sure.
I knew how heavy this guy was because my brother can really play. And he used to come home on a weekly basis, like blown away by his lesson with Mr. Gould. Right. So, and that went on for 2 years. Right. So I'm like, this guy's heavy, has to be, right. So I go in there for my first lesson with him, and I have the Albright book with me, the red cover. No, the Anthony Cerrone book. It was the Anthony Cerrone book.
Okay.
And he says, "Oh, you can do something in there?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, play." He goes, "I've been hearing about you for 2 years from your brother." He goes, let me, play. So he sits back in his chair, and I'm playing on a rubber pad. I play the piece of music, and I thought, like, to me, I killed it. To me, I nailed it. I couldn't believe it. I was so proud of myself, I thought. And he leans back in his chair and he goes, "Oh, very nice." He's like, I'm watching your hands. I don't see any bad habits. You read all the rhythms accurately. Your time is really good. And you followed all the dynamics. Very nice dynamics. You know very little about music, but I think I can work with you. And he kind of turned around and shuffling in his bag. And I was like, what? and he obviously he's a veteran teacher, so all this is for a reason. And he looks at me, and I'm a little frustrated, and he goes, "Do me a favor, play the first phrase you see there."
Right.
And it was already a different language for me. What do you mean the first phrase? Like, put something in front of me. I bet you I can read it. And to him, it's like, so what? That doesn't mean anything. Like, you need to make music out of this. He's like, because you're playing a snare drum, it's not music. He's like, how do you interpret it? He's like, if I play it and you play it perfectly accurately, it should sound nothing alike. If we're truly being musical, which people forget about classical playing, So so that was the first step to, 2 years of getting my butt kicked musically by a guy who probably didn't even, I probably had as good, my hands were probably as, well, they definitely weren't as smooth as his, but I had chops, and it didn't matter. It really didn't matter at all, because when he would play, it was like so much better. So it was great. It was great.
There was sort of his soul into it, or an interpretation of his playing. I see. Oh.
And he would teach you how to, like, in that particular piece, he's like, look at the first 4 measures there. He's like, and then he played it. And when he played it, it was an independent statement. It was like a sentence, and then there was another idea. And the second idea had to do with the first idea, but they flowed into each other. So it was all part of a bigger thing, but they were definitely specific phrases that were going by. And his thing was teaching us how to identify that. And that was way more important than if you played a rhythm wrong.
Right. No, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
So it just makes you deal on at least attempt to deal from a deeper place. So he was awesome.
Very cool. No, that's very cool. That it's true, because one of my profs at one point sort of said, because I was trying to attempt to play jazz. I'm not a jazz player, and I was kicking the kick drum like I was playing it like it was Bad Company or something. And he backed off, like, whoa, like the whole band can be buried by that. He says, can you feather that a little bit more and just kind of make it sound? He says, I want to hear that ride over everything else. He says, that's where the money is. That's where the rhythm is. He says, I don't want you to bury that. And like you say, I went, oh, okay. I thought the ride was just like, a hi-hat or whatever, But then I went back and played the same exercise, thinking about that hi-hat, and things changed. Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. Where does the traditional grip come from? I'm curious.
My brother, it's the way he taught me, and I never got match grip together. So much so that if I'm playing a medium tempo, R&B groove that has a rim click on 2 and a snare drum on 4, I will flip the stick over every time. I won't even hit the drum once with a match grip.
Really? Okay.
Really?
Because it's. I mean, it's something that I find really cool from you because we don't see it as much. I mean, of course, it's Stuart Copeland, some of those drummers that still do it, but we don't see it as much these days. And I was watching you play, and I mean, the snare is very present, even in traditional grip. So I was just wondering, like, how did he? Was it like studying? Was it something that came out? But you're more comfortable that way.
It's the only thing that I have muscle memory in. My brothers can play both ways. A lot of people can play both ways. I've seen, Vinny can play both ways, and there's a lot of guys that do it. But I just never got it together. And it's like I don't have the time to. I mean, I guess I could make the time. There's a pretty famous drummer, Thomas Lang. He switched. He was a traditional player for years, and then he switched over to match. And it probably would be the smart thing to do, but at this point, it's I am who I am. And actually, I stuck with it so long that it's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I guess,
yeah, exactly. So no, it's something you don't see as much, and you do it so well. But I was just curious. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't seen that in most drummers of these days, anyways. So that's interesting. So let's talk about the artists. So you were talking about Chuck Loeb. Is that your first serious sort of gig? Is that your first serious?
Band? He was the first sort of, I guess, national artist. I mean, he was a jazz player, so he wasn't a pop guy at all. Okay. But he was a guy in the New York area that his name carried weight. Before he played in Steps Ahead. He played with a lot of people over the years, and as well as being a solo artist. And I don't know if you know the drummer Zach Danziger. He was the drummer. He's one of my favorite drummers of all time. He was the drummer in Chuck's band before me. Okay. Along with the bass player Tim Lefevre. I don't know if you know Tim. Tim played for years with Wayne Krantz. Okay. And Tedeschi Trucks, the Tedeschi Trucks band, and like millions. He's like, that guy's insane. Okay. But so Chuck always had great bands, and usually made up of New York musicians because he lived in the Westchester area. Okay. So I kind of fell into that, and so that kind of set a lot of things off for me. Okay. Once you get rolling like that, and then the pop gigs came, from that. And Alana Davis was the first bona fide national pop singer that I toured with. Yeah, I went back and I remember 32 Flavors. It was somewhere in my brain. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that song from back in the day. And so she had made that record, and you went to tour that record. Is that it? No, she did the record. Actually, the drummer Nir Z. No, I do not. Nir Z. He lives in Nashville now. He's from Israel. Okay. He played on the John Mayer Room for Squares record. Oh, okay. Him and Jack Daly, they were like an amazing rhythm section team that they played on with a lot of different artists. So he did the record with Alana, and then when Alana was touring, she was using Gene Lake. I don't know if you know Gene, right? Gene's killing, right? Yeah. So Gene was the drummer of the band. And then Gene, I think, got too busy. I think maybe he was playing with David Sanborn or something. Mm-hmm. And that's when I joined the band after Gene. Okay. So I was with her for a couple of years. So how was that situation, being more of a pop situation? Were you touring across the country? For me, all over the country. It was actually long periods of time, way more extended touring than I do now. In terms of how big of a chunk you go away for at one time. But it was brand new for me. I was young, and the band was great. Kevin Jenkins on bass, Drew Zing on guitar. I don't know if Drew was the guitar player that did when Steely Dan did their kind of reunion tour when Denis played drums. Okay. Drew was the guitar player. So for me, I was in great company, and Alana's awesome. Mm-hmm. And and I was at that point, I think I had already gone through the stage where I was playing a lot of fusion gigs. I wasn't playing a lot of pop music. I grew up playing rock and roll and R&B. Right. And then my brothers kind of got me into playing straight ahead with Clifford Brown and Max Roach records, and I got what I thought was serious about playing straight ahead for a little bit, and then, to be perfectly honest, you start to see. When I discovered Bill Stewart and Brian Blade, and And someone who I always forget, and I'm so happy I'm not forgetting right now. There's a guy, this dude, Greg Hutchinson. Oh my God.
Okay.
Yo.
Just
ridiculous.
I've heard the name, but it doesn't. I don't see a face. Okay.
It's just incredible. Okay. And these guys have, all three of them. I mean, there were also New York area guys like Kenny Washington that were amazing, and then all the obvious jazz drummers that we all are fans of. But those guys, like, this is just my opinion. Guys like Greg and Bill Stewart and Brian Blade, completely different players. When you listen to the three of them. But the thing for me that I take from it is you hear so much like tradition in their playing, but they don't sound old. They sound perfectly new. No, you know what I'm saying?
No.
It's an awesome thing to achieve. And so when I hear that, and when I hear myself playing, it's like, if I can't hear that, if that's not what it sounds like, it became daunting and actually less fun. And I realized that's, at least at that point in my life, I had to be willing to just put every ounce of my life into just that.
Just doing that, yeah.
And although I love playing jazz, I don't love it that much that I need to play R&B. I just do, right? I need to play some rock and roll. And because of that, I just started to veer off from the straight ahead thing. I mean, I guess it's a cop out, but no, I mean, I mean, to this day, I still play, and I've done gigs. I've done pretty nice gigs playing straight ahead still, but it's not something that, when, again, the guys who really do it, it's another thing altogether. So by the time I got to Alana, I felt at home because her stuff was pop, but it was funky and singer-songwriter ish. I dare to say, but she was funky, man. She was such a great singer, and living in New York and living in Brooklyn, and I was around plenty of instrumental music. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I like playing R&B and funk. So
that's where sort of you're at home, if you will. Yeah. No, but that's I mean, you say a cop out, but if that's what you feel, you don't. I think you're okay.
I feel like the music. I feel like I respect the music enough that I feel like you owe it to put. Like, I felt like if I want my ride cymbal to swing like Greg Hutchinson, and it's not. so it would take a lot. It would just take so much, and I'm sure I wouldn't even attain it anyway. But at least if I really immersed myself in it, I would be a much better straight ahead player. But again, like I said, then the other stuff would suffer, and right. I'm pretty self-aware, and I kind of have an idea of what my abilities are, and where my heart is. So, and at the end of the day, man, I need to play like Earth, Wind, and Fire. I just need that in my life. So
it's a good statement, because it's funny. I'm doing a deep dive of Terry Bozzio these days. I don't know why. I'm just going back to his catalog and sort of thing. And he was saying that his thing is watching Tony Williams, and he was a huge Tony Williams fan. And he was saying, if I practice 10 hours a day for the next 10 years, I'm still not going to sound like Tony Williams. So he just went, you know what? I respect that so much that I'm just going to go here instead and do what I love. And thank God, because he did something amazing in his career. But I mean, at some point you sort of go, love it, not for me. And I think that's a healthy thing, honestly.
Yeah.
Cool. So you moved on to Alana. So, well, talking about funk, I mean, you went to play afterwards with the Average White Band. Is that how the situation happened? Cool. So So talk to me about that, because that had to have been fun.
Oh, so great! I did it for almost 6 years,
Cool.
And every time we went to California, Ferroni would come out. He'd be standing. He'd be standing on the side of the stage like this, with a big cigar in his mouth, with a smile on his face, staring right at me.
Play, son. I'm gonna watch you.
And then he would sit in, and then he would always sit in. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Really great.
Steve
really
is
great.
Amazing.
And traditional grip too.
Right. That's true. Steve is a traditional grip. Cool. So was it like a touring situation like every summer? Like how did you get the
That
gig?
basically there was a R&B band that played in the New York City area called the Funk Philharmonic, and they were basically a Tower of Power, Earth, Wind and Fire cover band. But they were made up of multiple former members of Tower.
Okay.
So many of the horn players, a lot of them singers. The lead singer at the time was had been singing with Tower, and Brent Carter. And he's now the singer of Average White Band, ironically.
Okay.
Yeah. But at the time, Brent was his lead singer, the lead singer for Tower, and he became friendly with the Average White Band because AWB and Tower of Power do a lot of touring together, right?
Yeah.
So Brent was the lead singer of this cover band, and I used to sub on this band probably twice or three times a year. And this particular night, we were playing in a club called the Barbat, and I was subbing. And Brent knew that the Average White Band guys were in town because then a few days later they were going to have auditions, and I was not on their radar at all.
At all. Okay.
At all. And Brent told them to come down and check out the gig because he wanted to hang with them, and I happened to be subbing that night.
Okay.
So they're watching. Now they saw me play. I didn't know that they were there, which perfect example of you literally never know who's watching you.
Yeah.
And I did my homework. So I knew the stuff. Like, I mean, I probably didn't play my very best, but I didn't know they were there, which was a good thing. And I kind of did my homework, so I wasn't floundering. And it was a great band. It was a really great band. And so the next day I got a call from the saxophone player, and he introduced himself, and he was like, man, Alan, the leader, he's like, he liked what he heard last night.
Nice.
And he's like, we have auditions, so you should come down because, like, I think at this point he really likes you. but he needs to play. He needs to feel it rather than just make a judgment call. Plus, they had guys coming in to audition.
Right.
So it was a situation where I actually went in and I auditioned for the gig. But I went in there with such an upper hand because, like, they knew I knew Brent Carter because I was playing in this band, and they saw me play stylistically music that was, quasi similar. And so they got to see the whole thing, and I'll also add this. Right at that same time, I was playing. I did a week at the Blue Note with Chuck Loeb, and Michael Brecker was playing with us.
Oh,
and
nice.
in my mind, like, I'm such a huge Michael Brecker fan. All I could think about was like, oh my God, I'm going to play with Michael Brecker, right? And so I went into the Average White Band audition so loose. Because it wasn't like I wasn't so loose, like, I don't care if I get this gig. I wanted to get the gig.
Okay.
But I had other things on my mind, which made it even that much easier for me. You know what I'm saying?
You weren't nervous about it. You just wanted to do a good job and not have an expectation, if you will.
Yeah. And I was working. It's like I was working with Chuck. I had stuff happening, so the world wasn't on my shoulders at that point. So I was, there was, it was like a series of events that were in my favor. It just made, I was fortunate in that regard. But I got the gig, and then they worked so much, man. They worked a lot. They worked so much. It's one of the reasons why I stopped doing it, because 5 years in, I started working with this musical director named Ray Chu, who does all that TV stuff.
Okay.
And I was also started working with Patty Austin, singer, amazing singer. And I started to have to turn down other things because I was constantly out with AWB. And then at a certain point, I just took a leap of faith, as much as it pained me, because they treat their guys amazing. They are awesome.
Nice.
And the music is awesome. So everything about the gig was so great. But at a certain point, I just didn't want another 5 or 6 years to go by. I felt like I wanted to dip my foot somewhere else. To, at least give it a shot, and it worked out. So
yeah. And how do you? I mean, is it sort of a belief in yourself? Okay, I can leave this situation, which is great, but I'll take a shot here. Is it more just artistic perseverance? I want to try something else, sort of thing. When you get to that situation.
Yeah, I think it was, I guess, a combination of two. I knew that I knew it was safe, and I'm
Mm.
very safe with so many things. Um, but at the same time, yeah, I wanted to just take. I just felt like if I'm not going to take a little bit of a chance
Mm.
now, I mean, I don't want to. If I wait till I'm like, well, I'm 52 years old now, but
Okay.
if you wait till you're in your 50s to start taking a chance, then you're really not going to take a chance. Like if
Mm.
you're going to do it when you're younger. So I just took a shot.
Cool.
I never thought of it as I felt like, oh, I'm good enough. I can do this. I had that didn't enter my mind.
Okay.
I was scared the whole way.
Okay. Well, that's good. Scared is good, but that is something, because it is. I mean, average white band is, like you say, something that it works, and we're all looking for something that's sort of stable and working. So I'm just asking that question because sometimes it is hard to leave something that's stable and working to go to something that is unknown. So that's why I was asking that question. So, well, let's get to the nitty gritty. I mean, I would talk so much with so many people you've played with. There's so many of them. It's ridiculous. But Hall & Oates, of course, is your main gig. I think it's been 14 years now.
Yeah,
14 years. Incredible. I saw you, by the way, in 2016. You came to Montreal. Excellent show. Really enjoyed myself. Hall & Oates for me is one of my favorite all-time band, and I'll do my fanboy. I am actually wearing
nice.
the shirt that I bought at the show in Montreal. So it was an amazing night for me. It was very cool. Oh, my camera just went out. Hang on. There you go. So how did you get the gig? How was the Average White Band? Was that some of that leap of faith that led you eventually to get to Hall & Oates? How did you get there?
What happened was we opened for Hall & Oates when I was with Average White Band.
Okay.
Many years ago. And the MD at the time for Hall & Oates was T-Bone Walk. And T-Bone and I hit it off. Like he watched our whole set and he dug it. And then from that point on, he would occasionally call me for things here and there. Nothing ever worked out. He even called me to take part in one of Daryl's solo records. And this is still years before I joined.
Okay.
And then they started doing their TV show Live from Daryl's House.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean Pelton, the drummer from the Saturday Night Live gig, he was the drummer he was the Live from Daryl's House drummer. So the Live from Daryl's House show was made up of the Hall & Oates band, with the exception of the drummer, because he lived in Portland.
Okay.
And so Sean was a New Yorker, and all the tapings happened in New York. So Sean was the drummer for that. And he couldn't make a taping for Live from Daryl's House. So that guy T-Bone called me up and asked me, would you be into doing it? And I said, yes, of course. And then, and it worked out. It turned out good. And Daryl liked me. And I became the sub for the television show.
Okay.
And then shortly thereafter, the drummer for Hall & Oates had to have some back surgery. And he offered me to do a run with Hall & Oates this time, touring. And Daryl, I was fresh in Daryl's mind. And Daryl, he was like, you should call that guy Brian. I don't even think he knew my name at that point. And and the drummer was like, you know what? I already sounded him out and he's available. And he was there. And Daryl and John were like, great, we'll use him. So I went in and subbed, and then that went well. And I became the sub for Hall & Oates as well. So I was subbing on both gigs simultaneously.
Subbing for the TV show and the live show. Okay.
Yeah, and then eventually the I guess the decision was just made. The management came and just said, we're just going to give you you're going to do both.
Nice.
And actually at the very beginning, Sean and I shared the Live from Daryl's House. Like if there was 8 episodes in a season, Sean would do 4 and I would do 4. That happened for one season.
Okay.
Because Daryl was in an impossible situation at that point, because Sean was the drummer for Live from Daryl's House. So what do? You can't get rid of the guy. It has nothing to do with Hall & Oates, right? But then the whole Hall & Oates band happens to be the band on the TV show. So it was weird on both ends for him.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I see what you mean.
So it was actually very smart. So we shared it, but then after a while, it just morphed into just me doing it. So yeah, I only bring that up because one, it was a hard place for Daryl to be for him to be put in. And on top of that, I also wanted to be noted that Sean didn't stop doing it because it had nothing to do with music, like playing. You know what I'm saying? It just made more sense because I was a member of the band. That's all.
Band, right. No, because Sean is the drummer for Saturday Night Live, and I think he still is. And
and a killer. So yeah, it's
Well, I grew up I grew up watching Saturday Night Live, and I would watch Sean, in the back do that.
Yeah.
Those kind of moves, those kind of faces, like that's so I'm just digging it kind of thing, and so okay, but that explains it because I went back to do a bit of homework, and I did see Sean on some of the recordings. I was like, okay, so I guess you joined, but okay, awesome.
Yep.
And talk to me about the show, because in your emails you were saying the preparation for that show is quite something. So how do you prepare for an episode of Live at Daryl's House?
They give us the music usually a week before for whoever the artist is, and there's no rehearsals for the show. We just do our homework independently, and oftentimes we just get the original recording, knowing that when we go to play it, the form's going to be different.
Right.
So that's it. We show up. The artist shows up. We verbally talk about how we're going to play the tune. Tape's rolling, and Daryl's thing is like, once you start, don't stop.
Okay.
And he wants to get it done as quickly as humanly possible.
Okay.
Because he wants to capture that, excitement. Mm-hmm. To me, it's fear. I'd rather do each one 10 times and play it better each time.
Right.
That's not who Daryl is. And I guess I have to admit, whatever, the way he does it makes sense because the reality is the show is super successful. So I got to give it up to him on that. The muse on me hates that. I know I can play it better every time. So
I agree with you.
Yeah. So we played the tune once with all the problems that occur, and then we talk about what they want to change, what was good, what was not good. And then I would say 85% of the time, the second time we play the tune is what you guys see.
This guy see on the TV.
And that's it. That's it. I mean, Sometimes we'll play it 3 times. It's rare. It's usually the second take, and that's it. So it's nerve-wracking. And as a drummer, sometimes people will say, "Yeah, we get here, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. This is the form," and somehow something gets screwed up, and that's not what happens. And as a drummer, it's like, especially playing that kind of music, it's not straight ahead. It's not very conversational music usually. It's, even though the genres change, it's still ultimately backbeat driven stuff.
Right.
So, and there can be some conversation. It's not like I'm on an island, but the reality is I'm there to hold it down and to make it feel good and to lead the way, which means it's my job to say there's a section coming up and I'm going to do something to let people know.
Yeah,
right?
a little feel something, yeah.
Yeah, and when that changes on the fly, someone all of a sudden just starts playing a new section, or the artist goes somewhere. Now my opportunity to set that up is now gone. It's come and gone. So
right.
For things like that, we would never do another take. You just got to live with it. That's it. So and again, I've asked Daryl, like this is your place. We have all day.
Exactly.
Why can't we do it? It's going to be better. And he literally told me, he's like, no, I don't want this. This is not the Grammys. I don't want this to be this is not a perfect performance. He's like, every time we do another take, you're going to start crafting what you think is the perfect drum part.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Everybody's going to remember, I did this on that last verse. I like that. So you retain that, and then you bring it to the next take, and you keep adding on what you think is great.
For sure.
And it's to him, that's not playing. Not that it's not playing, but to him, that now it's lost its energy and its luster.
Right.
Its wonderment. It's like, play.
It's too cerebral.
Yeah. He wants to play now. You know what I'm saying? He wants us to be in the now. And again, I give it up to him, because that's a lot of artists say they want to do that, but then they fix all the loose ends,
Right.
or they figure out, oh man, that didn't sound so hot. Let's do it 10 more times. Not him. If it even feels remotely good, he's like, that's good. That felt good. Next. And usually whoever the guest artist is, they're blown away. They're like, what? Are you serious? So we're not going to play this like
Again?
10 more times?
Yeah.
Nope. Next.
That's crazy. I really thought you guys prepared, but at the same time, I was gonna note an example. There's a Kenny Loggins episode where you guys, he comes in and you guys are gonna play Footloose, and and I'm watching this and I'm like, oh my god, they're doing exactly what I do in rehearsal with my band, which is like, well, the fourth section, the eighth bar, and and at one point Kenny's like, oh, hang on, drum beat is this,
Yeah.
and you're going, just doing, no problem, I got this, and I'm like, okay, and then you just go, and that's it, and you guys played the song, and I was like, wow, okay. it just felt like I went to see my buddies, we played a song, and that's it, and then it moves on. So what you're describing sounds exactly what I saw in that episode. So I don't know.
I'll say this: the odd thing, the thing that sets that episode in particular apart is Kenny's the one of the only artists that did something like that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah, and it's only on that. It's really only on that tune.
On that tune,
like,
really?
Yeah, there was because that actually drives Daryl insane. Because
really,
because he never wants to stop. And what happened was when Kenny came in, I forget the song. There was one song in particular. It was the first song we cut that day, and we started, and the intro was cool. As soon as the verse started, he went, okay, stop. Okay, so now, Brian, I want you to do this. And Shane, I want you to do this. And blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's go on. So now we do the intro. We do the verse. Great. Because we can retain. Everybody's a pro there. We're told something, we can do it. So then we get to the chorus. And it's like, oh, okay, stop. Now, when we get to the chorus, I want this. And he's fine-tuning it. Daryl is exploding because his attitude is I just want to go through it. I just want to play through it. And Kenny was able to get one full tune like that where he kind of stepped us through it. And let me add, I have no problem with that. I love taking direction because if it means the whole thing's going to sound great, I'm down with that. And I grew up listening to Kenny Loggins records too. He's a killer.
I mean,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. So, like playing This Is It with Kenny Loggins, like, come on, that's awesome. So I want to play those parts. I want to honor those parts. But Daryl's attitude is those parts are great. Yep, that record's great. But guess what? This is us now. I don't want to know what you do live. I don't know what I want. I don't want to know how I sing Hall & Oates records. I want something new right now. Let's just see what happens, and then do you have the balls to live with it is the question, which he does. So after that full tune of Kenny kind of directing us, Kenny could feel like, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this anymore for the rest of the day. So
that's amazing. Well, it explains the show. It explains also the live stuff, because I believe the live stuff is a bit more like that as well. Is it not that rehearsed? I mean, in the sense
there's zero rehearsals.
Yeah, exactly. There's a feel to it that it's jammy to it, but also sort of interesting. And at some point, okay, Daryl will do like, I don't know, 36 bars of at the end, and doing outros and whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And that's the feeling I had at the show. It was like, okay, cool. They ended there. That's cool.
There's no choreography in terms of like, not choreography. Nothing is the same way every time in terms of like there's no shaping of a set. Like, it's like it's very loose. It's loose, and sometimes we pay the price. It's not always
really?
It's not I mean but I think ultimately they're very old school, and so there's no tracks, and it's just they play music, man. And it's not about really anything else. I mean, when you have all those hit songs, it allows you to be able to do that, which is like great for them, Yeah. But musically speaking, it's. I didn't even do a rehearsal when I joined that band.
Really?
There's zero rehearsing.
Wow. Okay.
Zero.
Okay. Interesting.
I didn't. As a matter of fact, the first time I ever played with them, I didn't even get a sound check. There was a line check. to make sure the mics were on. 100% cold.
Wow. Okay. You surprised me. I didn't know that. That's not what I expected. Okay. And did it went well? I imagine it went well.
Yeah, it went well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. One other thing, Daryl. People are usually shocked by this. Part of how he does Live from Daryl's House, believe it or not, do you know who Jackie Gleason is?
You mean the actor from back in the day?
From The Honeymooners, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So he's a huge Jackie Gleason fan.
Okay.
And apparently the way those Honeymooners episodes were made is everybody's on a script. But Jackie Gleason is not on a script.
Really?
Jackie Gleason is sort of, he knows what the episode's about.
Right.
But he's sort of bouncing off of the script of the other actors. So he's kind of just maneuvering around stuff because he's Jackie Gleason. And Daryl literally approaches the Live from Daryl's House episodes like that. That's why, like, a lot of times they sing, the hook of a tune of some like hit song. And like, he's not singing it even nothing like the record because he doesn't do much homework. He uses to him, first of all, he can hear changes. He's a musician, so he can hear chords go by, so he knows how to maneuver vocally in and around stuff. And to him, it's like we do our homework, and even us, he's like, don't do too much homework. He really wants it to be fresh, and for him, he does very minimal homework, I think. Okay. This way it gives him the ability, so he doesn't get stuck. If you hear the same thing 15 times and you're a musician, you're prone to go there. Yeah. So he doesn't set himself up for that trap, and he's infinitely confident. So therefore, anything in his mind, anything I happen to just come up with in the moment it's going to be great anyway. It must be an amazing space to live in.
right. To not be in that fear and just say whatever happens.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
He just goes for it. So ironically, the Honeymooners is somehow connected to Live from Daryl's House.
That's crazy. I've never made the connection. I remember watching those episodes. My dad would watch that stuff when I was a kid, and I remember that. I remember watching an episode, and I remember he did something, and sort of the set sort of fell.
Yeah, shit for the future.
Yeah. I could see people in the background sort of putting back the set together as the actors are continuing with the episode. And I remember being a kid going, huh? What happened there? And I was like, okay, so the episode. That's crazy. I'm talking to you about that. But that was something because I'm from I'm a Gen Xer, so I would watch Cheers and Night Court, and I never saw anything of this. But then I was watching Jackie Gleason. I was like, huh? They're replacing this? So yeah. That's crazy. Well, to conclude with Hall & Oates, that's really cool. And at the same time, I guess that's why there's such a longevity to the band, because I guess that's why they're still having fun. In other words, they're doing shows, they're doing Live at Daryl, and they're still having fun, and it's not so contrived or so sort of premeditated or whatever. I guess would you say that's why? I mean, of course, they're the best-selling duo ever, but they got the hit songs. I know, I'm proof of it. I still sing them to this day. Yeah. But would you say that that's the longevity of the gig for you and the longevity of the band? Is that one of the elements, because it is lasting?
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. And they're those guys, John and Daryl, both they just love playing music. They do, and they're proud of they're proud of their library, and they also have no qualms about playing. Like Daryl isn't one of these guys that's like, here we go, I got to sing Sarah Smile again. No, it's just the opposite. They love, it's like, I think some of these tunes. Not all the tunes were, really written 100% together. A lot of times Daryl would come up with a tune and then he would just bounce an idea off John, and vice versa. Right. And vice versa, So, yeah, I mean, I think John kind of came up with Maneater, and I think he loves playing Maneater. I don't think these guys, like, I've been around a couple of artists that, like, they have that one hit that they're known for, and they kind of like, they're not crazy about having to do that, right? Not these guys. Again, it helps when you got about 18 number ones or something. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's insane. Yeah.
I hope you don't mind. I'm going to tell this very short story, but just to show you how much Hall & Oates is known everywhere. This is 2002. I'm touring with my band. I'm in Chile, and at some point we decide to go visit this park. It's like a volcano ash park. It's in the middle of nowhere. We're doing it on a taxi, and we have this set up. And basically, the guy talks minimal English. He's Spanish, and he's explaining to us, this is the park. This is what happened. Blah 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 blah. And we're talking, but there's a lot of awkward silence in between the explanation. So at one point he decides. He says, and this is like in a Toyota Corolla, 19 whatever it was, has a tape deck to it, and he goes, do you mind if I play music? Now I'm in Chile, so I'm thinking, okay, some sort of band, some sort of Chilean band, I'm going to hear some sort of Latin stuff. No, he pulls out Hall & Oates and puts the best he puts the best of record cassette tape into the tape deck, and my face just went, and I just lit up, and I was like, it was the best moment of the whole trip, because I was singing Hall & Oates song in the back,
nice.
while visiting this park, this amazing park in Chile. And I was like, I'm going to remember this moment. If I ever get a chance to meet there or whatever, I'm telling the story. But anyways, close enough. But it's just to go to show how much, how far and how wide spread they're appreciated. So
yeah, man, we're going to Japan. I should I can't say that. we're going to
give it a little snip.
What? Say again?
You can give us a little snip, not too much if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that we're going somewhere that I'm not supposed to say.
We didn't hear it. We didn't hear it. Domo arigato.
And I'm bringing my son, actually, 15.
Oh, very nice.
Years old. Yeah,
very nice. I went to Japan.
Yeah.
Japan is amazing. Japan is just an amazing place to play and to visit. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Man, it goes by so fast. I knew this was going to take forever but this is amazing stuff. Quickly, last story that I want to talk about Hall & Oates. Did you break your foot, and did you go on playing the gig that night with Hall & Oates? Was there some sort of story of where you broke your left foot, I think, with a taxi?
I got run over by a New York City cab. And it was the night before a Live from Daryl's House episode with the Blind Boys of Alabama.
Oh.
And I was sitting in the street. The ambulance hadn't even shown up yet, and I was on the phone with the musical director at the time, Paul Pesco, the guitar player. And I was like, I can come tomorrow. Don't worry, because I go, my leg and my foot is broken, but they're gonna put me in a cast. You got to wait usually a week because the swelling's got to come down, and I don't need my left foot. It's fine. And he's like, no, you're in shock right now. You have no idea what you're saying. Don't worry. The Blind Boys of Alabama, their drummer's with them anyway, so you're good.
Okay.
And we had almost 6 weeks off from anything Hall & Oates at that point.
Oh, so sort of,
so
good chance.
It was right in that hole, yeah. And then when I went out, I was obviously in a boot and crutches, but I did the tour like that. I would just put my left foot on the left. I would just sit, like, hang my left leg out. I had my main hi-hat was closed tight, and I set up a secondary hi-hat that was a little swishy over my floor tom. Okay. Until I had use of my left foot. Yeah.
So how long did it take to get it back?
I mean, it was a while. Like, it was like I think that run was like 3 weeks long.
Okay.
And then we had a couple of weeks off, and at that point, I started like using my left foot again. Okay, but again, it was hurting. But like, if you're gonna lose a limb, lose your left foot.
Very cool. You talked about this. I want to dig into this. You talked about this Spanish artist that you toured with.
Oh yeah.
But it was a last minute call, and I forget the name. I'm sorry. I have it.
Alejandro Sanz.
Yes. So talk to me about the story. This is very interesting and a good story for people watching us, for drummers watching us.
So basically, the musical director of that band called me on a Thursday morning, kind of panicked, like, yo, what are you doing tomorrow night? And I said, I have a feeling I'm going to be playing with you somewhere. And he's like, you need to go to the airport today and get to Chicago.
Crazy.
They didn't let the drummer in. So basically, it was because of COVID. When COVID was happening, the band was the Alejandro is from Spain.
Okay.
So they do all their rehearsing in Spain. And I mean, this band and this guy, they do soccer stadiums.
Okay.
Yeah. Like arenas are not big enough. They do soccer stadiums. He's huge, right?
Okay.
And he and his band is monsters. They're great.
Okay.
And so they did like a month's worth of rehearsals in Spain. Turns out at that point, if you were coming from Europe to get into the States, it was right when COVID was coming to an end. It was okay. You could get into this. You can get into the country via Europe, but the drummer, her name is Helen De La Rosa. She's killing, great drummer, and she's from the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
And what I believe happened was I think she came in through the Dominican Republic, maybe.
Oh,
all I know is that because she was coming from a different place, or in addition to that, maybe there was probably some mess ups with paperwork. All I know is that when she got to this country, they didn't let her through.
Wow. Okay.
And so now they were gonna. This was their first performance for a U.S. tour, right after COVID. Like, this is huge. You know, and now audience, everybody has a cell phone in their hands.
Right.
Like, artists now more than ever you just can't have a crappy night. So the MD told him, he was like, I got your guy. My guy can come in here and do it.
Okay.
And he talked them into it. So yeah. Okay. So I flew to Chicago. They sent me an MP3 before I got in the plane. So I was listening to the stuff. And it was one song. I don't know if you can imagine this. It was like 2.5 hours of music, but it was one MP3. And all I had with me was my phone, right? So I'm like listening, and if I want to rewind 8 bars before, it would be like a song and a half back.
Yeah, I know.
Right? So now, and in addition to all this, everything's in Spanish.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
So when I get there, I'm like a half an hour from the venue, and he calls me and he goes, "Listen, it was like 9:30 at night, Thursday night, the night before the show."
Right.
And he goes, "Listen," he's like, "make sure you get at least the first like 3 tunes." He goes, "Because Alejandro's here, he's waiting for you. He wants to see and hear you."
Okay.
And he's like, if you can knock him out in the first couple of tunes, maybe he'll go split with the confidence that we can keep working and get it together.
All right.
So, and that was the smart thing to do, because it allowed me to not worry about listening to 15 songs. So I just listened to the first 3 tunes, and I wrote myself a chart. Okay. I wrote myself charts, and I got there.
I'm curious, what is it you're writing? I'm just curious. Is it like 8 bars, this groove, 8 bar section?
Yeah, like basically. I mean, there was definitely some notation. Like, I would write, if a song started with a certain fill, I would write out the fill. I would write out the main pocket for the verse, the main pocket for the chorus at the top. And then it was just a bunch of series of 8s with circles around them and 4s and things like that, right? Okay. Now, Alejandro's music, though, I discovered, it's more sophisticated than just straight up pop music. Okay. I like, dare I say, he's like the Sting of the Spanish world. Okay. Like, his stuff is like, he has a huge fan base, and you can know nothing about music and love his music, but you can be really deep into music, and there's a lot of layers to that onion. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So, which again makes it more daunting when you have to learn it fast. So I realized, like, after we played the 3 tunes, it went well, and he was super happy, and he left. And then the MD was like, "So you want to keep working?" I was like, "I can't, because I'm going to be playing music I never even heard before." So just said, "Just let me go to my room. I'm just going to write charts." And I stayed up all night. Okay. I stayed up the entire night, and all I did was write charts, and just to give myself enough information that once the song starts, I know how it starts. And then once I'm in the song, I'll probably start remembering, just from, and that's how it went. But like, again, no vocal cues. Everything's in Spanish. You would hear, like, I would hear a count off in my in-ears. Like, you hear blah, 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 blah in Spanish. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm saying to myself, okay, whatever it just said in my ears, I hope that corresponds to this chart that's right here. Right. Here we go. And just rip into it with full confidence and pray, in front of an audience. Right. No, exactly. Wow. But if I didn't write, like, so the reason the chart thing, like, I realized, like, at that moment, the night before, like, I can't commit to memory 2.5 hours of this music.
No,
It's
exactly.
too sophisticated. There's too much stuff going on. So I had no choice but to use the paper, which I hate, but it saved my life.
No, well, in that situation, I mean, yes, seriously, because I don't think I could remember that much music, and especially something you've never heard before. So
Yeah. It was insane. It was insane. It was the most pressure-filled 24 hours.
And how did you feel afterwards? I'm curious. How did it feel afterwards when you accomplished that?
It felt great. It felt awesome. I mean, I felt relieved, and I also felt like part of the reason I was nervous, to be frank, was the MD he had talked to Alejandro about me before. So and like he's the one that talked him into like, don't cancel the show. I got a guy that can do this. If he's gonna go to bat like that, now he's gonna look like that, and he's gonna look like a jerk if I go in there and take a dump on this concert.
True.
So like part of my biggest fear is actually letting down the MD, because he kind of put a lot of confidence in me, but it worked out. Everything worked out great. So
crazy. Very nice. Last 10 minutes. Thank you so much for your time. So basically you also do the Thanksgiving Day Parade for the NBC TV broadcast. Now, like I was saying, as a Canadian, that's something that's very American. So describe to me a day, which is great. I mean, but describe to me what that involves and what is it that you do exactly. I went out to check because there is a link to it on YouTube, but I mean, there's a lot of musicals and there's a lot of things passing by, but is there an official band situated somewhere playing the music as the parade goes by? What is the context?
No, what it is it's one day in a studio before that day, pre-recording all that stuff that you hear.
Okay.
So, and the biggest thing is, I mean, we play every time like the camera goes to the person on the mic, it says, "Hey, this next thing's coming up, and now we're gonna go. We'll see in a minute. Here's our sponsor," and then you hear music a bumper that plays you into the commercial. We do all the bumpers and stuff. But the other thing that we record, there's basically a main band set up in a studio with horns and everything, and the Broadway, every Thanksgiving Day parade has two or three musical theater productions that come out and do a little performance.
Right, I saw that. Yeah, right.
And it's usually the new musicals of that year, right? So what happens is the conductor for the given, like one year I did it was SpongeBob, right? Like,
nice.
Right.
Okay.
So it was SpongeBob and something else, right? So the other show comes in first. The conductor comes in with his drummer. Okay. Because now, and it makes sense because drums, it's like you can notate everything everybody plays, but you're not going to notate what a drummer does, right? So to make the sessions go smoothly, I would get up and the drummer for that particular musical would come walking in with the conductor, and the conductor would use our studio band.
Okay.
And his own drummer.
Okay.
But when I think it was SpongeBob, one of them came, they didn't bring their drummer.
But
and it's like,
if I may ask, bringing the drummer is to show you what to do, or this because the musical just wants to be clean and have their music played. Okay.
Yeah, because like again, it's not like when you play, if you give the saxophone section the music for the musical, if they play what's on the paper, it's going to basically be what happens in the pit. If you give a drummer a chart, it could sound incredibly different. It's how you interpret the chart, right? So for the purposes of not wasting studio time, they bring the drummer because that's the only thing that's such a wild card. I
understand. Okay.
Yeah. So occasionally on that session, they usually bring the drummer, but when they don't, now I have to just read in that moment, which is a real pain in the neck, because here's the other thing. Sometimes they don't come with jump charts. They come with a transcription of what the drummer plays, which is absurd. It's like every grace note, every open hi-hat.
Right.
It's filled with ink, and it's not how real life works with charts. So there was a few times where I was faced with that, which is really a nightmare. But usually they bring their own drummer, and that's how that works. So so it's basically playing the musical, a couple of musicals, it's a couple of songs, and a bunch of bumpers. And the MD for that is Ray Chu, who does Dancing with the Stars. He was also the MD for he took over for Ricky Minor for what was the first, not the first, but the talent show that started all the talent shows, American Idol. Yeah, he was the MD for American Idol for maybe 4 or 5 years after Ricky Minor left, and then he went to Dancing with the Stars. He's been there, I don't know, 12 years or something, 14 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and all the Apollo, Showtime at the Apollo. He's the MD for all that stuff. So he's the guy that has that account, and he's also the guy that did the Macy's 4th of July.
Okay.
thing.
So
I'm luckily I'm one of his dudes that he called.
A good guy to know. A good musical director to know.
Yes.
Very cool. And the bumpers themselves, is it like you say, it's charts? Basically, they say, okay, this is the bumper for this, the bumper for that, and you do it a couple takes, and then that's it.
Yeah, it's done very fast. And even some of these bumpers, to be honest, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes it's not even a chart. Sometimes he'll just sing something to the orchestra. He'll be like, okay, and you guys are gonna do this. You're gonna do this, and he'll just sing a part to people and just play it and move on. He is super fast. When you work with that guy, you have to have your head. You have to be like ready. Yeah, you really do, because he moves quick. He moves really quick.
I guess Daryl prepared you for that stuff then. Anyway.
I've been working with Ray before Daryl, actually.
Oh, okay. So there you go. So
I think Ray prepared me for him.
Vice versa. Very cool. Well, I mean, again, I could talk to you for hours and hours, but I'm going to end it in the next 5 minutes. So cool. So what's coming up for you for the next year, for the next few months? What is it that you want to do?
Well, I just have touring. I have touring with Daryl and Todd Rundgren, which is great. Get to play with Todd, do a set with Todd, and do a separate set with Daryl. So we're kind of double dipping on the road. So which is musically great for the band.
Now, forgive me for asking. Actually, is Todd Rundgren guitar player? I just have to remember.
Yes, he's a guitar player, singer.
Right.
He's almost the same age as Daryl, and they're both from Philly, outside of Philly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Todd, you know a lot of Todd's music.
Okay.
Huge hits.
Okay.
Huge hits.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up after the episode. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So we're touring now through November.
Okay.
And that's and then as much recording as I can keep going here at the house. And lately for me, December, January, February, March has been very light playing wise. Okay. But I mean, usually the studio thing notches up at that point.
Okay.
And so whatever I can get my claws on.
And is that something you recommend to people, to drummers who want to do this as a living, to have sort of a two-tier way of doing your life in terms of like either teaching and touring, or either recording or touring, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I recommend you better have your hand in a lot of things, because it's I mean, I operate I'm in Hall & Oates 14 years, and I was still doing a weekly $125 funk gig in Manhattan.
Really?
Yeah, I grind. To me, the Hall & Oates gig can be over tomorrow. There's no guarantees.
I see.
And when you go away, if there's ever a time to keep your hand, where you live, to keep your name around, you got to be around. You can't be lazy. My advice is, don't be lazy. I mean, don't kill yourself, but yeah, I mean, part of what having a good gig is it elevates your name, which leads to other things. But at the end of the day, if you even have one gig with a quasi-known artist, you're already lucky.
Okay.
And and when that ends, what do? You can't shun the stuff you were doing prior to that. So to me, I'm still doing weddings on weekends. I'm still playing in clubs. I don't care what I do. I'm never going to stop doing that other stuff. But that's just me, And maybe if people don't want to, if that's like too abusive to your body and you want to teach, that's fine too. Then teach. But don't just vanish from the rest of the world because you have a good gig. Right. It's gonna come to an end. That's for sure.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you're gonna get another one. So you better I don't want to wait to start to get students until I have to get students. You know what I'm saying? I mean, actually right now I haven't been teaching, but like from a playing perspective, I don't want to wait till, oh my God, I have nothing anymore.
Mm.
Let me start to try to work around town again. I'm not going to start there. I'm going to keep whatever little bit I have going. I'm going to keep that going.
That's good philosophy. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's good philosophy. Well, I was going to ask you what's the best advice you can give someone, but I think you just did. In other words, I think you beat me to the punch, basically.
How about be on time? It's amazing with all the incredible talent out here. There's so much talent. It's insane. But you know what? There's not a lot of. Be on time and have done your homework. And ironically, those are two things you can actually control. Yeah, you can go into a situation and play your ass off. And that doesn't mean that the right person's going to like you. But you definitely can control being there on time.
That's time. Prepared.
And prepared.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much stuff we can't control. It's insane to me to not at least take advantage of the few things you can. So it's like, wow.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Brian. I think we'll end it there because I could continue on and on and on and on. I want to thank you so much for taking the time. I hope the viewers have taken this episode, have learned a few things. If people want to reach you, where could they reach you?
I'm so bad at this. I know that my Instagram is called Brian Dunne Drums.
Okay.
Facebook, I don't even know. I just you just type in my name. And I mean, my website, I don't even now, since I started using Facebook and Instagram, I don't really go on my website all that much. But if I get a message through, I do sometimes get emails via my website. And if someone wants, a lot of times I get a request for tracks.
Okay.
So,
that's how people can contact you for tracks, basically.
Yeah, they just email me via the website or via social media, one way or the other.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah,
I wish you a great rest of 2023. Hopefully, I'll see you again at some point with Hall & Oates. Hopefully, you swing by Montreal again. And
man.
Thanks so much, man. It was great chat, and thanks so much for taking the time. And all the best to you. Seriously.
Great, thank you, man. Same to you.
Have a good evening.
All right, see you.
So there you go. There's our episode with Mr. Brian Dunne. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a few things. Come back next week for another episode of Drumfills Kafé. Until then, I hope you have some great shows and some great gigs. Wishing you all the best. See you next week. Ciao.